2020 has been a challenging year for all of us. For the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, we were faced with the dilemma. We had to make the decision whether we were able to proceed for 2020 at the Donald E. Stephens Convention Center in Chicago. And as you know, we had to pull the plug. The good news is, through working with collectors and enthusiasts over the years, we've been able to make some great connections, meet some great people. Today, I'm happy to say we're here to present MCACN 2020 Northwest from the Brothers Collection.
My thoughts on the Brothers Collection is, in my opinion, unparalleled and unduplicated in our hobby. It is simply amazing.
They have a very eclectic mix of all brands, domestic and foreign. I've been all over the world and seen many private collections and public collections, and nothing comes close to this.
Welcome everyone to the West Coast version of virtual MCACN. Since we can't do it in Chicago this year, we're going to do it out in Salem, Oregon. The Brothers Collection Museum, which is almost finished, was nice enough to let us host it here. We're going to feature a bunch of their cars. It's probably 130,000 square feet, probably 360 cars in their building. They've got several hundred other cars that are off-site that don't fit in here the way the layout is, but the layout is very nice. So anyway, it's probably the most comprehensive collection of muscle cars in the world, and this is our chance to share it with everybody. And the brothers have been a sponsor of MCACN and helped us all along from the get-go. So we're very appreciative of what they're doing, and this is a sampling of stuff that they have, and it's quite the treat to be here looking at all this stuff and getting to share it with everyone. The museum will be open in the future on a semi-public basis for fundraisers, etc. Right now, we're still getting everything in order, but they're nice guys. They're not camera hungry, so you won't see them on camera. In fact, there goes one. He's hiding. Oh, there he went. Anyway, they're private. It's more about the cars than it is about them. So, you know, need to worry about them, just to appreciate the cars and that they're sharing them with us. And it's a pretty neat collection of stuff. I was asked to pick out a couple cars that I think are special to me. People that know me know I'm a little bit off the beaten path on stuff I like. There's a purple Gremlin X back there. It was at MCACN, I think a year ago. I think Level 1 Restoration restored it for the brothers. It's something, it's a labor of love to restore something like that because it costs way more than the book value of a Gremlin X. But this thing is just, it's purple, 4-speed, done perfectly. Love that car. Another car, it's not your typical American car. There's a collection of cars here that are European cars, there's Ferraris, etc. There's a Bizzarini here, which is all aluminum Italian car, only made with a Corvette, small block Corvette motor with side draft Weber carburetors on it. Just cars, artwork, hard getting in and out of it, but once you're in it, it's the most comfortable, fun car to drive. Great car. Kind of a muscle car with a Corvette motor in it. They're very good performing cars. There's a 66 R code, I think it's a Galaxy XL, which is a 427 R code. It's a dark gray, like a slate gray almost, with a red interior. Most guys that walk by it, I don't know, it's the color combo just jumps to me. I think that's a really nice car. Probably one of my all-time favorites is the Pikes Peak Hill Climb Torino that Bobby Unser set a record at Pikes Peak that stood for years. We unveiled it at MCACN a couple of years ago, had Bobby Unser there, and after listening to Bobby Unser tell stories about that ordeal, it even became a more favorite car of mine because you could listen to Bobby Unser tell stories for hours on end. And the stories he told about that car and the hoops to get it built, and putting walnut shells in the tires. Goodyear fighting them on it because they didn't want to put walnut shells in the rubber because they'd contaminate the air in the plant. But who was going to say no to Ford? Because Bunky Knudsen was backing the whole project to get Holman Moody, Smokey Unick, Bill Strope, everybody involved in the build of that car. Really special car. After he set the record at Pikes Peak, wins the race, Knudsen gives him the car. And then he says, I'm there at Pikes Peak, I don't even have a trailer. He says, I don't have a way to get it home, so he gives it to Bill Strope, and it's sat in Strope's shop for years. And then the brothers happened to be at the Portland swap meet, and there was a guy with a little booth selling stuff in the swap meet, and he had a little picture of this car for sale, and they bought it, and it's quite the car. It's unrestored, just perfect. Love that car. Back behind you guys that are filming is the GT40 press release car, the original press release car, and I think that's the only GT40 with both air conditioning and leather interior, and that's just like eye candy to look at. Artwork car, that's what put GT40s on the map, I think, is that look. It's like one of my favorites. I don't know, there's lots of favorites. There's lots of Yenkos, there's Copos, there's Shelbys, I think there's over 55 Hemi cars in the collection. There's over 40 R-Code Fords in the collection. You can look at 69 Trans Am convertibles. There were 8 made total. There's 4 of them here in the collection on display. There's Ram Air 4 Trans Ams. There's, you name it, it's all here. There's a row of L88 Corvettes. It's by far the most comprehensive collection of any muscle cars in the world. Somebody may have more, but not the quality and comprehensiveness of this stuff. It's just stuff you don't, the Cherokee Camaro out front, the styling car that GM built with the big block with Weber carburetors with the clear hood section so you can see it. I mean, Charlie Hutton restored that for them a few years ago. We unveiled it at MCACN. It's just, that's just the ultimate looking car. Candy apple paint. It's like, stuff's all here. It's fun to look at. And there's stuff in other buildings that aren't on display yet. They'll have to rotate stuff in and out. We know it's not the standard MCACN that we have in Chicago every year, and which has become like a family reunion for everyone. But luckily the brothers were nice enough to give us this venue and let us feature some of their cars, because we can't feature all of your cars. So we're going to do our best to walk around, take photos, show you each car. Thank you for supporting us all these years. We're pretty sure we're going to see you all next year in Chicago. You'll probably see more cars from the brothers collection. Every year they send a couple cars. They support us in every way. Hang in there, and everybody stay well and stay safe.
Here we are today with MCACN Northwest 2020. We're at the Brothers Collection in Salem, Oregon, and we're here to talk about muscle cars. In order to define a supercar, you need to go back to a regular muscle car, which we feature at the Muscle Car Corvette Nationals. And those were cars that you could go into a dealership, back during the muscle car era, and sit down and spec out and purchase through your salesperson. Pretty much anybody that could afford to buy one could order a muscle car. A supercar was a car based on a muscle car, generally, which was beyond what the factory would build and gave it even additional performance. And because those cars are kind of the ultimate in performance for the era, those are the most coveted and revered cars of all time, the supercar. A good example of a supercar, and there are plenty of them here in the Brothers collection. One, for example, is the Yenko Camaro right here behind me. This 1967 Camaro originally came from the factory with a 396 engine based at, I believe, 350 horsepower, and the Yenko car dealership took the stock engine out of this vehicle and replaced it with the highest performance engine that they could get from General Motors at the time, which was a 427 cubic inch Corvette engine. And they created a supercar. In today's world, you have a lot of clone vehicles, vehicles that are not originally built back in the day. In fact, at the MCACN show, we have a judging venue which is called Day 2 Judging. It's a concourse level judging based on a 1,000-point score, and it's very rigorous. And our judges will go through these cars that are brought to be judged as Day 2 cars, which helps with the authentication of the vehicle. Also, they will verify parts that are on the car. So for example, a car that comes in for Day 2 judging, we will look at the parts that are used on that Day 2 vehicle and determine whether or not they are correct for the era. So you couldn't have a modern wheel and that would score properly. You'd have to have a vintage wheel that was used, like a Krager wheel that was used in the 60s or 70s, in order to be judged properly. We're one of the few venues that actually has that type of judging, and we were the pioneers at initiating that Day 2 type of judging. So that's something that you'll see at MCACN, and it's one of our largest growing segments. In defining Day 2 muscle cars, Day 1 would be the day the car was completed at the factory, as it rolled off the factory assembly line. Day 2 is what was done afterwards. Now, in most cases, Day 2 cars were initially Day 1 cars that people bought at the dealership, took home in their own private garages, and made modifications, added bolt-ons, etc. When it comes to a supercar, that is also a Day 2 car, but it was converted at the dealership when it was sold new. And that's the distinction for Day 2. Supercars are prevalent at MCACN because that's the place. If you've got a cool supercar or muscle car, that's the place to show it off. And again, another big growing segment of the show are the supercars, both vintage and modern. So MCACN will feature modern built supercars, and we're kind of in a resurgence of the old supercar era. I mean, today you can buy cars from supercar builders, such as what we do at the NICXEY Performance Shop, that have over 1,000 horsepower and will run 9-second quarter miles in street trim, which is pretty amazing, especially when compared to what the cars were doing in the 70s. But you will be able to see cars like that, both vintage and modern, at the MCACN show.
Our coverage of the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals 2020 has been brought to you by Mecum Auctions, Bill Stasek Chevrolet, and Reliable Carriers. And now back to the Brothers Collection, where we join Dave Wise in front of a stack of Challenger TAs and AAR Cudas.
The SCCA Racing was a series. We've always heard what wins on Sunday sells on Monday. So what they were interested in is getting into the Trans Am racing program. There were Javelins and Z28s and Camaros, and years back they had the Barracuda was in competition. They had a new platform that was coming out, which was called the E-Body. E is for a 1970 series. So what they entered into was the Trans Am Racing Series. They were looking for 2 drivers. And one of the drivers they selected was Dan Gurney. Dan Gurney's AAR team was out of California, and they adopted the name AAR, All American Racer, for that program. They participated in all the races through 1970, and it was the only year they raced the E-Body cars, which is the Barracuda and the Challenger, was in the 1970 series. The AAR Cuda and the Challenger TA were built during a 5-week period. They were all built at one assembly plant in Hamtramck, Michigan, that used to be referred to as Dodge, Maine. Those vehicles were interspersed amongst the general population of vehicles produced. There were 2 assembly lines. They had line 1 and line 2. So, as you could imagine, there was a lot of complexity involved to integrate these very special and unique vehicles that have a special engine. So they had an engine build area that they had to work through. They had a special fiberglass hood that they were probably not used to handling at that facility. So there were a lot of challenges that the plant had building these. The powertrain in an AAR was available. Let's start out with the axle, 391, 355 gear ratio. They had available transmissions, either a 727 automatic, or they had an A833 new process gear 4-speed. Certainly, by today's standards, everybody loves the 4-speed. They're fun to drive. It really enhances the driving experience. When you get into the engine, it was a very special engine. They had the standard 340 with a 10.5-to-1 compression ratio that had a higher iron content of the block. It was a 4-bolt main. It had 3 Holley 2-barrels on top of an aluminum intake manifold. So it had sort of an air induction system that was available. You can see the hood, the features of the hood with the teardrop. That was to bring in air, and the vehicle had the engine had special cylinder heads as well. So they had cantilevered push rods and valves, and it was just a very well-performing engine. For the series, these were put together basically by Keith Black. So he was instrumental in basically running these engines through their paces. And of course, when they were running into sanctioning races, they were basically de-stroked to a 305 versus the 340, which was the street version. The wheel options that were available were 15-inch wheels, front and back. Behind us are 2 examples of a hubcap car with a trim ring, and then the other is the road wheel, which is a W21 package, and they had stagger tire sizes. So it gave the car a bit of a rear rake, unlike any other production car that Chrysler was producing in the E-Body series. In the suspension of the vehicle, it had, over the standard Barracuda, it had larger torsion bars. It had a front and rear anti-sway bar, which were not available on all vehicles. So it really added to the enhanced driving. They had special quick ratio steering that was available on these cars. Not all of them got it, but these vehicles were such a pleasure to drive, as opposed to some of the bigger block engines that had the engine more towards the front of the vehicle. This was set back, had better offset. The drivability was much better response, easier to corner. They were just a dream to drive. What's nice about it is the sensation you feel and hear with the side exhaust, the performance. It's basically a full package car. Where it really performs, if you've ever been on a road course with a car, this car versus another car, it's a night and day difference. The main reason is where the weight proportion is with the engine. You have a smaller displacement, the engine is closer to the firewall, so the balance of the car is much better over a 426 Hemi or a 446 pack. So the way to quickly spot an AAR TA on the road is you look at, it has a rear spoiler on it, it has a front spoiler on it, it has an Organosol painted black hood, very distinct, and it has unique stripes. The high impact colors are the sought after cars. They are FY1, which is lemon twist. They are FJ6, which is go green. They have FM3, Panther Peak, Moulin Rouge. Behind us we have a wall of AARs. There's 20 colors available. They have just about every color. They're only missing a couple, and they are continuously pursuing those few colors. And I would suspect, with help from the listeners to this program, as well as myself, Bob Ashton, and others, I'm sure we're going to come up with the colors that they need to complete their collection. The 2021 MCACN show is going to be epic. Everybody that missed out on not being able to attend the 2020 show because it was canceled will have a greater experience in 2021. We will have the 1970 models as well as the 1971 models. Many of the cars that you're going to see here today, especially the ones that are on a wall behind me, will be available on display for you to see in person.
At the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, we're known for our special displays and unique features. Among my favorites are our Premier Unveilings, where we spotlight prime examples of American muscle that join us from across the country. I'm pleased to announce from the Brothers Collection, we'll maintain that tradition and again present 2 Premier Unveilings.
What we have here is a 1968 Firebird Ram Air 2 Coupe. This particular car is a 4-speed car. It retains its original drivetrain and has the distinction of being the only one made in Rally Green. So it's a special paint code order car in Chevrolet's Rally Green. And it comes with a black interior, has tilt wheel AM/FM radio. This car was sold new in Palo Alto, California, and stayed in California for a good chunk of its life. When we bought this car a couple of years ago for our customer, it came out of Oklahoma, where it had been in a collection for many years and hadn't been seen by anyone in the public until now. So we're unveiling it for the first time here at our virtual MCACN show. So like all of the cars that we debut, it's a fresh frame-off restoration. We do every nut and bolt. We've fussed over the overspray and the paint marks, and in addition to that, how it runs. We dyno test these cars. These Ram Air 2 Firebirds usually come in around 440 horsepower roughly, anywhere between 430 and 450 horsepower. They were really strong, probably one of Pontiac's fastest street cars ever made. What's really neat about these Ram Air cars, when they were built, they originally had a single snorkel stock Firebird air cleaner on them when they were delivered, and the Ram Air equipment would be in the trunk. So, because now it has all the Ram Air equipment on it, is the original air cleaner. And one really neat detail about this is that we were able to print the lettering on the air cleaner assembly like it was done from the factory. Most cars you'll see, even the best restored cars, will have just a decal there because it's pretty difficult to print on a curved surface. So this customer was really good, will let us chase after some of these really cool details and really get it dialed in.
Every year at MCACN, Bob Ashton and the Muscle Car show ask us to put together a Ford display, a special invitational. You might remember a few years ago we did the Boss 429 display where we had one of every color in both 69 and 70, and then we even had the Ohio George factory drag car. And for 2021, it's going to be called the Cobra Jet Invitational Display. Cobra Jet was marketing terminology that most people think of the 68 and 69 and 70 428 Cobra Jet Mustangs. That was the beginning of the 68 and a half Mustangs when they debuted them at the Winter Nationals. But the Cobra Jet terminology was carried on into 1970 and later with the 429 Cobra Jet that was used in the Torino in 1970. And for 2021, we're going to have some really unique Cobra Jet Ford products, both Ford and Mercury. Walking through here, I noticed there was a 70 Ranchero Cobra Jet, a 69 Ranchero Cobra Jet, Cougar convertible Cobra Jet car, 69 Mustang GT convertible Cobra Jet, and some of those are Super Cobra Jets also. This black GT Torino convertible is extremely rare. It's one of three that was ordered with the 430 Detroit locker axle ratio, and that's a 429 Super Cobra Jet. One of the rarest Cobra Jet cars probably on the planet. The black with the white top is a great color combination. It's just something you're probably not going to see again. They only made 3 of them, so it's going to be one of the highlights of the invitational display. Another unique car that will be on display from the Brothers Collection will be the 69 GT500 convertible, one of 22 that has the 428 Super Cobra Jet drag pack option, which is a very rare car. Now also in the Cobra Jet lineup in 73, Ford also called the 351 Cleveland 4-barrel a Cobra Jet, and we'll have at least one of those Mustangs at the show. We put the word out that we're going to have a 428 and 429 and 351 Cobra Jet display, and if you have a car that is worthy of being in the display, contact us and we'll try to get you in the display and make it as unique as we possibly can.
Most years, as you walk into the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, you're greeted by the show's premier display. In 2021, it will be General Motors adorning the red carpet.
One of the really neat things that we've got going on over at MCACN is that we have all these different displays. And we have an excellent red carpet display, which this year we're calling our top dog display. And it's going to feature the top makes and models regarding horsepower, which is what MCACN's all about, for the class of 1970. And so when you walk into the show and you go into the main aisle, off the red carpet, there's going to be a complete long row of the baddest hardtops and coupes that were produced by General Motors. And on the other side of that is going to be the equivalent, but in the ultra rare convertible version. And so you're going to get a chance to see LS6 Chevelles from GM, their top dog. You're going to have Oldsmobile's top dog W30, which is the top option on a 442. You're going to have Ram Air 4s, which is GTO's top option in both coupe and convertible. And then you're going to have Buick in a coupe, Stage 1 GSX, and convertible Stage 1s. So it's going to be an incredible display. In fact, some of the cars you'll see may be from the Brothers Collection. And the way these cars come about is that they are hand-selected by the MCACN membership, and invitations are extended to these cars. So these are going to be the absolute best of the best cars, must see. I mean, to give you an example, black with white stripe, black interior, black top, LS6 Chevelle convertible that was formerly owned by Charlie Sheen. Right next to this particular car here in the Brothers Collection, this LS6 Chevelle coupe came from the Dana Meekum collection, now residing in the Brothers Collection, and I believe the car has less than 50 original miles on it. Behind that is a W30 convertible that was unveiled and featured at MCACN and scored a Concourse Gold. These are the types of cars that people will get a chance to see, the type that you don't get a chance to see any other place.
So one of the things that I like the most about the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals is being able to have the interaction with not only our participants with their cars, also of course the spectators. There's so many stories that are being told. But one of the other things that I really enjoy is the relationships we've built with our sponsors. Our title sponsor, of course, is Meekum Auctions. Presenting sponsor, Bill Stasek Chevrolet. Our official carrier, Reliable Carriers. Of course, South Oak Dodge with Denny Guess, our good friend for many years, and so many others. Some of the finest restoration shops in the business, our regular participants, sponsors, and huge supporters of what we do. We have some fantastic artists, the best of the automotive artists. And, talking about the sponsors, I think as I walk through the Brothers Collection, Meekum Auctions. There are so many cars here that were acquired through various Meekum Auctions. So the few of the cars that are standouts for me personally that have been purchased through Meekum Auctions, of course, the Rapid Transit System Duster. It's a car that's near and dear to me because of my close friendship with Stephen Giuliano. We had the honor of having those cars at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals in the past. So for me, it was a real thrill to see the car end up here in the Brothers Collection. Other cars that stand out for me that were purchased at Meekum Auctions, the original unrestored LS6 Chevelle. The car currently has under 50 miles on it, and that car is original 100% down to the tires. And, people joke about having the original air in the tires. I would believe it probably does. They have a 65 Shelby supercharged GT350, again, purchased at a Meekum auction. And it's not just specific brands, so again, driving home the message that nobody sells more muscle than Meekum. 66 Fairlane lightweight, finest in the country, without a doubt. Another one of my personal favorites, the John Hurlitz 426 Hemi Cuda convertible. Again, a car that was part of our E-Body Invitational when we did the Hemi E-Body convertibles. Point being, Meekum Auctions has a tagline or a slogan that says that they sell more muscle than anybody. And that's a fact. And we can see it here in the Brothers collection, the finest muscle car collection in the world. In fact, I would say one of the finest overall car collections in the world, with multiple cars that have been purchased through Mecum auctions.
So every year out of the MCACN show, they spotlight certain types of cars. So every year they have like an invitational group. And for example, in 2019, they had a GTO Ram Air Invitational. So they started with a 65 and they went all the way up through each year and what they offered as a Ram Air. Coming up in 2021, they're gonna change things up and they're gonna look at Firebird Ram Air cars, which is quite a bit different than a GTO display, but the same, same idea. It's really a neat thing because not only for the people that come to the show, but for the owners of the cars to hang out for the weekend with people with cars just like theirs that they may have never met before. So it's really a neat gathering that works out not only for the people coming and buying a ticket and going to the show, but the people that own the cars too. Very cool. So in '67, Chevy and Pontiac jump into the pony car market, and at this point in time, all the emphasis at Pontiac was on the GTO. Well, when they get into this, John DeLorean was the general manager of Pontiac. He wanted an extra 6 months to introduce the Firebird after the Camaro so they could refine it. So they take that 6 months and they come out, and right away they have a Ram Air Firebird because they already have a GTO going and everyone knows about it, but it's pretty under the radar. Not a lot of people even knew the existence of this car, but really the drag racers knew about it because it was had a lower advertised horsepower rating just because of a rule GM had about horsepower and weight of cars. So it was really a quite a bit more potent car, I guess, than a GTO would be. It's a smaller car with the exact same engine. So that's how a Ram Air Firebird, started its life in almost obscurity in 1967. So there's not too many of those around. In '68, they revised the engine in '68, and at that point they called it a Ram Air 2. They never really officially called it Ram Air 1, but people just picked that up and called it Ram Air 1 and Ram Air 2. Now the Ram Air 2 '68 Firebirds, probably one of the fastest Pontiacs made. Just because they were the lighter car with that round port engine, all the best special engine parts in the lightest car. So that's kind of the development. And then by '69, you could get a variety of Ram Air cars. You could get a Ram Air 4, you could get a Ram Air 4 Trans Am or a regular Firebird, and then you could get a Ram Air 3 engine, which they sometimes called an HO. And sometimes it wouldn't have the Ram Air, but it just started to grow and develop. So that's kind of the quick progression through the line. And by '69, they were making more of them. And when they came into 1970, along with the '69 Trans Ams, all of those cars had Ram Air. So that was standard equipment on a Trans Am. It would automatically have a functioning scoop. The first couple of years, it was almost drag race centered all the way, and by '69 it was more of a street package that you could really order up to be a specific high performance application, or it could just be another cool car, a lot like a GTO would have been. So they made them in smaller numbers. They were smaller cars with the exact same engine, so even though all the advertising and all the magazine ads and all that, a GTO was still king, production number wise, no doubt. And I think now, today, in most cases, a Ram Air Firebird would be worth more than a Ram Air GTO of the same equivalent year. So, and you can imagine back when these cars were brand new that someone would buy a GTO, it had a lower cost than a Ram Air Firebird, and it had a back seat and a nice sized trunk and a higher horsepower rating. By virtue of the car weighing more, GM was able to put a higher horsepower rating on it. So you can kind of see why the Firebird didn't quite have the sales numbers that a GTO would. It just didn't really add up on paper. So when you're getting a Ram Air Firebird, you would get a special carburetor, a special camshaft, the distributor ignition timing would be different. The exhaust manifolds and the exhaust system would be different to a degree. And then we mentioned the mandatory gear ratio. So it was really an entire package. So a Firebird really had a wide variety of how you could buy. There was 5 different engine combinations you could get. But on the Ram Air, you really got the best of the best heads, intake carburetor, all the best parts. They weren't made in such high numbers that they couldn't put the best carburetors. Instead, they did that. They specifically made those cars better. So when you got a Ram Air Firebird, I mean, 9 times out of 10 or better, it was gonna be a really well-performing, high-performance car. So by the time you get to the 68 Ram Air 2 and the 69 Ram Air 4s, there is just a specific sound. The camshaft they used in these cars was a computer-designed camshaft, which was, you know, kind of ahead of the curve back then, and it was a really good piece, and these cars made a lot of horsepower. And the reason that they had a mandatory low gear is because it really started making power at about 3,500 RPM. So you can really hear it. It's an unmistakable sound that they make, and they will rev much higher than any other Pontiac engine, to the point now to where a lot of these cars don't have their original blocks anymore because they would rev so high and guys would miss gears and blow them up, and just having all kinds of fun with them, doing what people used to do with them back in the day. But they were really specifically powerful and definitely their best engine combination. So in the 2021 Firebird Ram Air display, I'm really excited to see what is going to be out there. We will have 1 or 2 cars that we're going to bring out for customers, probably a 69 Ram Air 4 Firebird. There's a couple of Ram Air 4 Firebirds behind us that have already been shown at MCACN in previous years and unveiled. So, seeing how we won't be meeting in person for this show and in this crazy year of 2020, we have the pleasure of being here at the Brothers Collection. It's really hard. It's almost beyond words how nice and neat it is, and it's kind of like a quiet version of the MCACN show.
Our coverage of the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals 2020 has been brought to you by Mecum Auctions, Bill Stasic Chevrolet, and Reliable Carriers.
At the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, one of the fastest growing and most interesting areas of judging that we offer is called vintage certification. This is a different type of judging because we concentrate on preservation instead of restoration. With the emphasis being on preservation, these are cars that can be used as a reference for restoration. So our judging team for vintage consists of experts for each of the individual marques. So in other words, if you have a Mustang specialist will look at it. If you have a Mopar specialist will look at it. If it's a General Motors product, whether it's Buick, Olds, Pontiac, or Chevy, we have a team specific to that make or model. Here in the Brothers Collection, there are numerous examples of cars that would be prime vintage certification cars, many with mileage in the single digits. I had the pleasure of viewing their 67 Mustang, which has, I believe, 3 miles on it. And these cars they're timepieces. It's like stepping back in time and seeing something. A prime example of what vintage certification is all about. 1971 Hemi GTX that was recently acquired through a Mecum auction from the Tim Wellborn Muscle Car Museum collection. We've had the honor of having the car at our show. Not only is it an unusual color, Bahama yellow, one of the high impact colors for 1971, just one of the highest option Hemi cars ever built. The car has power windows, it has a factory electric sunroof. Just the list goes on and on. So as I say, it actually is known to be one of the highest retail value Hemi cars ever built. Prime example of preservation instead of restoration. With the vintage certification program, with the emphasis being on preservation, we're a trendsetter in that these are cars that in the past have been somewhat overlooked. And with the emphasis being on preservation, we're encouraging people to preserve these cars so that they can be used as reference pieces for future restorations for other cars. I encourage our spectators to take a close look at this. And they're easy to find because in our show, as far as physical location, they're located at the back of the main hall. You'll see 2 lifts. So this is unique in that you'll be able to see the undersides of the cars also. It's a very interactive display with a lot of activity going on. And our judging team is always open to talking to you and explaining exactly what this is all about. But from a spectator standpoint, I would say this is a must-see portion of the show. And although it's always nice to look at shiny cars, or what some people refer to as trailer queens, we have plenty of them. This is something a little bit different, and you can certainly learn a lot from it.
While vintage certification focuses on unrestored cars, the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals team is adding a new judging category to the 2021 show.
In addition to all the other programs that are available, those will still be in place as everybody has experience. What this is going to be referred to as the Pinnacle program, and it's basically going to be an OE, which is original equipment type judging format. Everybody's familiar with it. This is a much more stringent program that is going to look at the fine details of a car in a very acute fashion. There will be multiple judges, there will be specialists by vehicles that will be brought in for very unique vehicles. So the MCACN event is being recognized as the collector car event for muscle cars. And we are receiving cars that have been restored at impeccable levels. And those customers of ours that are coming to the event are looking for a program so they can have their car judged beyond the current high level that we judge for concourse in an OE fashion. So what we're going to be looking for are those features and characteristics of when it left the factory at that on that production day. In 1970, that has a little bit of different standards than 1971, 1972, etc. So we are going to focus acutely on seeing how close that car has been replicated to the exact standard.
There are several things that make this category unique, and one of the unique features is that the cars are all judged on a 4-post lift. So the judges have access to everything on the underside, and they can use small flashlights, so it's really a thorough process.
This event will take probably about 4 hours a vehicle. There will be multiple people that'll judge various areas of the vehicle, what they have specialties in. If there is a vehicle that comes to our event that maybe we don't have subject matter expertise on hand, we will bring in a guest to help us qualify that vehicle to an OE standard.
We bring in people depending on their qualifications and the list of entries. So if we have 3 Shelbys and they're all 68s, I bring in Mike Shalley, who's actually from Chicago. He's my assistant national head judge for 67, 68 Shelbys in the SAC organization. The Orange Boss 351 behind me is an original 850-mile car. And the car has already won a Thoroughbred Gold in the Mustang Club of America. And that's the highest award in the Mustang Club of America. And for the Pinnacle judging, we actually use the Mustang Club of America Thoroughbred judging guidelines with minor modifications depending on if the car is a Mustang or a Shelby versus a Ford Fairlane or a Cougar, then we need to modify the sheets a little bit. It was a great car to start with to put in a Thoroughbred class or the Pinnacle class because it had all the original parts. It has the original battery the car was born with, the original tires, the original window sticker is still attached to the driver's side window. The only thing that was done to that car to get it to the level to show in the Pinnacle or the Thoroughbred class was it had minor engine compartment detailing, like the exhaust manifolds and a little bit of touch-up on the cylinder heads. But that car is still about a 85% unrestored car, which is really unusual that you can show a car like that in basically a restored class. That's how good the car was to start with. And in the Pinnacle class, you really need a great car to start with. If you're thinking about that class, it's almost impossible to find original carpet if it's not still in the car, door panels, the original belts and hoses and oil filter, a battery, the battery cables. You really have to start with a car that has great bones to start with to get to that level. And the Orange Boss 351 definitely meets those qualifications. The car just kind of sets a standard for the rest of the people that are restoring these old Mustangs. This is what they look like when they were new. And that's pretty much the goal for most restorers, is try to make them as authentic as they can and replicate the way they were when they left the assembly line.
While the pinnacle judging category is just getting its start, Corvettes have had a similar category, Triple Diamond, already established.
The Triple Diamond Award is actually 3 awards altogether. It's a Bloomington Gold or Survivor Award. It's an NCRS Top Flight or Bowtie Award. And then we judge the car on our criteria at our show, and that's how you end up with a Triple Diamond Award. The first things we check are tags, and in the tags there's codes, and it tells us options, colors, and we're basically saying, yes, this is what the car is and what the owner is representing it to be. A lot of people will bring in a car just so they have a work list on what they need to do to achieve, the Triple Diamond later on in the game. I find that a more educated owner is better for us and better for the hobby. At our show, I have an owners meeting. I explain to the owners how their car is going to be judged. I explain what kind of recourse they'll have if they have a disagreement. My judges, when they judge, they have to write what is wrong with the particular part. Not say it's reproduction or replacement. They have to say what is different on it, what is wrong. We will prove to the owner that it's not the correct part, otherwise there will not be a deduction. Our judging form is one of the only judging forms where you can fill it out that you disagree with the judge's evaluation, and then I will come and settle the disagreement one way or the other. And we're very proud of that fact because we have a lot of happy people at our show. The Triple Diamond car behind me is an excellent example. It's one of my favorite because it's an untouched car. And these are the cars that you learn from. When you get beginner judges, you teach them what is correct and what's not correct. It's an absolute stunning car. It's only got 35,000 original miles. Even the exhaust system on this car is original. It's an excellent learning tool, and that's why it's such a special car. I think the MCACN Triple Diamond is an excellent experience for anybody who wants to have a car judged. A lot of people call me and they're worried about, what we're looking for, and I tell them, bring your car, you will not be disappointed.
And now, I'm pleased to introduce our second unveiling for MCACN Northwest 2020.
So we have here a 1969 Coronet RT convertible with a Hemi 4-speed. So that's a great combination. Not a lot of people thought to get that combination in 69. This is just one of 4 built. And this one is finished in a beautiful B7 blue with a blue interior, and as you can see, a white top and a white tail stripe. This particular car had been off the road since sometime in the 70s, and amazingly has all original sheet metal. There was just a little bit of patching to do on this car, very minor repair in the trunk and the lower quarters. It remarkably survived, and these cars are known to be rusty cars. So when my customer set out to buy one of these cars, he was just looking for a Coronet convertible with a 4-speed transmission, and that turned all the way into what we think is the best one he could have possibly obtained. So between 68, 69, and 70, there's only around a dozen cars you could even look at that have a Hemi 4-speed convertible in a Coronet RT. So I feel that he really got the best car he could possibly buy. The condition was good. The restoration is awesome. We went out of our way to buy as many new old stock parts as we could. So if it's not new old stock, it's probably a restored original part. Some of the things, gas tanks, weather seals, trunk seals, battery cables. I mean, I have a long list of original new old stock items that we used on this car. And it's just an amazing car. So as we went through this engine on this particular car, we wanted maybe just a little bit of extra power, so we paid close attention to the camshaft we put in. We wanted it to still sound factory, but the end result was this engine made 540 horsepower and well over 500 and some odd foot-pounds of torque as well. So as nice as this car looks like an absolute museum piece, this thing will really fly. On these cars, some of the things you put so much effort into are things that you don't really look at as often as you might. Like the undercarriage of the car takes an extensive amount of work to make it look like the factory did. And some of the overspray inside the fender areas and stuff, the guys back at the shop have just done an awesome job at recreating how these cars were built when they were new. It was really a treat to do such a rare car.
We've all been faced with some challenges in 2020. For me, I like to look at the opportunities that may arise from these challenges. Coming out to the Brothers Collection and being able to present to you, MCACN 2020 Northwest was one of those opportunities that I can't even begin to describe. I'd like to thank you, the viewer, for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed what you were able to see. Special thanks go out to the MCACN LLC members who allow me to live my dream on a daily basis, along with Doug and Marty, the caretakers for the Brothers Collection. Special shout out, of course, has to go out to my wife, Vicki Ashton, who does all the hard work behind the scenes, and my son, Ian, who also helps me facilitate and make the show come to life. In closing, I'd like to thank the Brothers Collection for allowing us to be here and remind you to mark the big red circle on your calendar for November 20th and 21st, 2021, when we return to the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois for MCACN 2021.